You know someone who makes six figures but still checks their bank account with anxiety before buying groceries. Maybe that's you. It doesn't make sense on paper, but psychology shows this pattern is everywhere. The more people earn, the more trapped they feel. Let's unpack why high earners still feel broke and what's actually happening in their minds. First, lifestyle inflation moves faster than awareness. When you get a raise, your brain doesn't celebrate long. Within weeks, that extra income feels normal. Psychologists call this the hedonic treadmill. You adapt to positive changes so quickly that they stop feeling positive. That new apartment, the better car, the upgraded phone plan. None of it registers as luxury anymore. It's just your life now. And here's what stings. Your expenses grew with your income, but your sense of security didn't. What makes this worse is that spending upgrades feel justified. You worked hard. You deserve it. And you're right, you probably do. But deserving something and being able to afford it without stress are two different things. The gap between those two ideas is where financial anxiety lives. Now, let's talk about the comparison trap. Behavioral economics shows that humans don't measure wealth in absolute terms. We measure it relatively. When you earned 40,000, you compared yourself to people earning 30. When you hit 100,000, suddenly you're surrounded by people earning 200. Your reference group changed. Social psychologist Leon Festinger called this social comparison theory. You don't feel rich or poor based on what you have. You feel it based on what others around you have. This gets amplified if you move neighborhoods, change jobs, or start following different people online. Your brain constantly recalibrates what normal looks like. And normal always seems just out of reach. Here's something most people miss. High earners often face invisible financial pressure that doesn't show up in budgets. Expectations from family. Pressure to maintain a certain image at work. The unspoken rule that you should pick up the tab because you make more. These aren't line items in a spreadsheet, but they drain resources constantly. Psychologists call this emotional labor cost. It's the mental and financial energy spent managing other people's perceptions and needs. And if you're supporting family members or paying off debt from before you earned well, your current income doesn't reflect your current freedom. You're financially responsible for past decisions and other people's circumstances. That weight doesn't care how much you make now. Then there's the savings paradox. High earners often feel broke because they're actually doing something right. They're saving aggressively. Retirement accounts, emergency funds, investments. This is smart behavior, but it creates a strange psychological effect. The money exists, but it doesn't feel accessible. You see a high income, then watch a significant chunk vanish into accounts you can't touch. What's left feels smaller than expected. Research on mental accounting, pioneered by Richard Thaler, shows we treat money differently based on where it is. Money in savings feels separate from money in checking. So even though your net worth is growing, your day-to-day experience is scarcity. You're building wealth, but you feel broke. And that disconnect is exhausting. But there's a deeper layer most people don't consider. High earners often have high standards, not just for things, but for experiences and security. You don't just want a house. You want the right house in the right area with good schools. You don't just want savings. You want 6 months of expenses saved, then a year, then enough to retire early. These aren't bad goals, but they're moving targets. Every time you hit one milestone, your brain generates the next. Psychologists call this goal gradient effect. The closer you get to a goal, the more motivated you become, but also the more you notice what's still missing. This creates a cycle where financial success never feels like enough. You hit your target income and immediately start thinking about the next level. Your brain isn't wired to celebrate what you have. It's wired to scan for what's missing, what could go wrong, what you still need to achieve. And that brings us to the real problem. It's not just about the money. It's about what money represents to you. For some people, a high income means they've finally made it. For others, it's proof they're on the right path. But for many, it becomes a shield against fear. Fear of going back to struggle. Fear of losing status. Fear of not being able to protect the people they care about. When money carries that much emotional weight, no amount ever feels safe enough. You're not just managing finances. You're managing anxiety. And here's where it gets tricky. Society tells you that earning more solves problems. But psychologically, earning more often just reveals new ones. You realize your job is demanding and you can't buy back time. You notice your relationship shifted when your income did. You feel guilty for feeling stressed when you know others have it harder. Financial therapist Brad Klontz found that many high earners experience something he calls money shame. They feel like they shouldn't complain because they're doing well on paper. So they stay silent, which makes the feeling worse. What amplifies all of this? The fact that nobody talks about it honestly. People share their wins, but rarely their financial anxiety. You see someone's promotion announcement, but not their credit card debt. You see the vacation photos, but not the payment plan behind them. This creates an illusion that everyone else has it figured out. Meanwhile, you're wondering why you still feel behind despite doing everything right. That isolation makes the struggle heavier. Let's address another uncomfortable truth. Lifestyle creep isn't always about wanting more stuff. Sometimes it's about finally giving yourself things you denied for years. Maybe you grew up without much and now you're compensating. Maybe you spent a decade being frugal and you're tired of saying no. This isn't reckless. It's human. But it does mean your expenses rose to meet your income and now there's no margin. You're not broke because you're irresponsible. You're broke because you're catching up emotionally to where your income already is. There's also the exhaustion factor that doesn't get enough attention. Earning a high income usually means working hard, managing stress, and carrying responsibility. That takes a toll. When you're mentally drained, you're more likely to spend money for convenience or comfort. Takeout instead of cooking. Services instead of doing it yourself. Small purchases that add up because you're too tired to care. Psychologists call this ego depletion. Your willpower is finite, and when it's drained by work, your financial discipline weakens. You're not lazy. You're running on empty. So what actually helps? Start by separating your income from your identity. What you earn is not who you are. It's a tool, not a scoreboard. When you stop using money to prove something, the pressure drops. You can make decisions based on what actually matters to you instead of what looks right to others. Second, define enough for yourself. Not based on what's possible or what others have, but based on what genuinely improves your life. Research shows that beyond a certain point, more money doesn't increase happiness unless it's aligned with your actual values. Figure out your enough, then protect it. Don't let lifestyle inflation steal it back. Third, acknowledge the gap between net worth and daily reality. If you're saving aggressively, recognize that's why your checking account feels tight. That's not failure. That's strategy. But if it's causing constant stress, maybe adjust the balance. Building wealth shouldn't destroy your mental health in the process. And finally, talk about it. Find people who get it. Not to complain, but to reality check. You'd be surprised how many high earners feel exactly like you do. The silence makes everyone think they're alone in this. Earning well but feeling broke isn't about math. It's about psychology, expectations, and the stories you tell yourself about what money means. Once you understand that, you stop blaming yourself for feeling this way. And that's when things start to shift. You don't need to earn more. You need to realign what you have with what actually matters. Understanding why you feel this way doesn't make you ungrateful. It makes you human. Your brain is doing exactly what it evolved to do, scanning for threats and chasing security that always feels one step away. The feeling won't disappear overnight, but awareness changes everything. Now you know what's actually happening beneath the surface.